First of all, Nolan Wells, Javon, and I want Javon to hear this, and I want any other black person who was on Devil Horns Island that day to hear this. And I want any black person who was celebrating the 4th of July to hear this. No black person, no black freedman, no black immigrant, no member of the black race at all should have been celebrating July 4th, 2026. No one should have been celebrating America's 250th solar return. And why? Because our ancestors were still enslaved on July 4th, 1776. So why are we on White Devil Horns Island anyway, celebrating George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton and all these other white supremacists and slave masters? Why are we even celebrating them anyway? Nolan shouldn't have been out there. Javon shouldn't have been out there. No black person should have been celebrating the 4th of July, period. We would be enslaved for almost another century after America got her independence. So what are we celebrating for? To celebrate the 4th of July as an African is to celebrate the enslavement of your ancestors and the freedom of your slave masters. It makes no sense.
For 31 days, Dr. Umar Johnson said nothing about Nolan Wells. Not one video, not one post, not one word. For a man who built a following on never staying quiet, that silence was its own kind of headline. Then this week, he sat down for over an hour, and what he laid out wasn't grief. It was a list. Questions about 3 boats instead of 1. About a phone that didn't stay where it should have. About a 5 o'clock window nobody has explained. And within hours of that interview going up, a second story broke. A so-called mystery altercation. 30 minutes after the boy everyone's been talking about was last confirmed alive. 2 different silences just broke in the same week. Question is, do they point to the same answer, or 2 different ones? Here's what we can tell you for certain right now. Before anything else, Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He went out on the water on the 4th of July. He did not come home. 2 days later, his body was found along the northwestern shore of a barrier island 10 miles off the Mississippi coast. That much nobody disputes. Everything else, the timeline, the phone, the boats, the 5 o'clock window, and now this altercation, that's where the accounts start to pull apart from each other. And that's exactly where we're going tonight. By the end of this video, you're going to have the full source timeline of what happened on Horn Island. You're going to hear Dr. Umar Johnson's questions in his own words, not a summary of them. And you're going to see claim by claim what the public record actually supports and what, despite a full week of digging, we could not confirm. No charges have been filed against anyone in this case. No one has been cleared either. Every person named in this video is entitled to presumption of innocence, and we're going to hold that line the entire way through, even in the parts of the story that get uncomfortable. Let's get into it. Before this was a case number, before it was a grand jury referral, before it was a hashtag, Nolan Wells was somebody's kid brother. He grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, one of 6 children raised by Christine and Elmore Wansley. In that house, football wasn't a hobby. It was closer to a family language. At Ocean Springs High School, Nolan wasn't just an athlete. His coaches remember him as the kind of kid other players follow without being told to. Not loud, not looking for credit, just consistent. There's a story his mother has told more than once, because it seems to say something true about who he actually was. In a math class, there was a special needs student. When the teacher asked a question, Nolan quietly got the whole room to put their hands down so she could answer on her own without feeling rushed. When she got it right, he started the celebration, not performed. Man, after high school, Nolan enrolled at Southwest Mississippi Community College, walked on as a freshman wide receiver number 16. He'd just finished his first year on campus. He was due back for summer training camp on Monday, July 6th, 3 days after his last confirmed sighting. Hold on to that detail. Not an open-ended summer. A short break before the real work of the season started again. Independence Day fell on a Saturday that year. Nolan spent the way he and the same group of friends had spent it before, a boat trip out to Horn Island. Now, if you've never been, Horn Island isn't a resort. It's a federally protected barrier island. No roads, no development, no year-round law enforcement. You get there by boat or you don't get there. And when the boats leave at the end of the day, whoever's still standing on that beach is alone with the Gulf. That's the setting.
Bombshell tonight in the Nolan Wells investigation. A mystery altercation emerges. And not with the guys that took him to the island on the boat. Does this change things? We cannot ignore it.
If people are sending in videos, they should be using those videos to conduct further investigation.
There is a group of people fighting at 5 p.m. Who are they? Where was he? He wasn't floating in the water. He wasn't on the shore. Tonight, evidence of a so-called mystery altercation is emerging. Straight out to Crime Stories investigative reporter Dave Mack. Dave, what can you tell me first about this so-called mystery altercation? And this is not with the men that went to Horn Island on the boat. You know what? Let me just be clear. Crime Stories is not a symposium, a gathering place for a witch hunt. We want the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells. We are here to convict no one yet. And if evidence of a mystery altercation with other young men arises, we are pursuing it.
Now let's build a timeline, because this is where the case actually lives. According to GPS records later obtained from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat carrying Nolan's group left its dock at approximately 9:56 in the morning. It arrived at Horn Island at 11:14, a little over an hour on open water. Nothing about that departure raises a single question. It's an ordinary holiday morning, headed to an island this group had visited before. The last confirmed sighting of Nolan alive puts him on Horn Island around 3 p.m. At around that same hour, according to dispatch audio later obtained through a public records request, someone aboard the group's boat called for towing assistance. The vessel's bilge pump, the system that keeps water from collecting inside the hull, had failed. The boat was taking on water. This detail matters more than it looks like it does. For almost 2 weeks, the only public explanation for why the group left the island at all came from one source, a public statement from Jackson County Chancery Judge Ashley Cole, whose son Warren had been on the boat that day. She said the group left around 4:30 because of mechanical failure, that Warren last saw Nolan around 3 o'clock, and that Nolan chose to stay behind, planning to catch a ride back later with a different group he'd met on the island. When that statement first went up, none of it could be independently verified. It deserved to be treated exactly that way. Not dismissed, not accepted as settled fact either. Some of it has since been corroborated. The dispatch audio, recorded in real time, hours before anyone knew Nolan would go missing, confirms a mechanical failure genuinely happened. Nobody invents a boat emergency in advance of a disappearance that hasn't occurred yet. That part of the account holds up. The GPS data tells a closely aligned story. The boat left Horn Island at 4:31 p.m., matching Judge Cole's account almost to the minute. It returned the original dock at 5:44 p.m., after apparently being towed for several miles before picking back up to normal cruising speed. So here's what's confirmed, and here's what isn't. And I want you to actually hold both of these in your head at the same time, because that's where this case lives. Confirmed. The boat had a genuine, documented mechanical failure. It left the island without Nolan at 4:31. It got back to the mainland a little over an hour later. Not confirmed why Nolan wasn't on it, whether he stayed by choice, like his friends' families have said, or whether the circumstances were more complicated than that. And that gap, the roughly 90 minutes between the 3 p.m. distress call and the 4:31 departure, is where every unanswered question in this case, actually lives. When the boat pulled back into the dock and Nolan wasn't on it, nobody called his mother right away. Not, by every account available, because anyone was hiding anything, but because this group had made this trip before, and one quiet evening on a holiday weekend didn't register yet as a crisis. That changed just after 11 o'clock that night, when Christine's phone rang. It wasn't Nolan, it was one of his friends. Around that same hour, Warren Cole placed a call to the U.S. Coast Guard. The response, as later reported. The situation as described that night didn't meet the threshold for immediate deployment. No cutter went out. No aircraft went up. The call was logged and closed within minutes. That decision, made in the very first hour anyone official was told something was wrong, would later become one of the quieter but more consequential details in this entire timeline, because it meant real hours passed before any organized search began. By morning, Elmore Wansley couldn't wait on process. He took his own boat out and searched near Horn Island himself, while a formal search stood up on shore, Jackson County Sheriff's Department, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the National Park Service, the Coast Guard, and the Volunteer Kinju Navy. For 2 full days, that search covered land and water with no result. Then, on the morning of Monday, July 6th, at approximately 8:45 a.m., a National Park Service ranger spotted a body in the water along the island's northwestern shore. The search for Nolan Wells was over. The search for what actually happened to him was only just beginning.
Dave Mack, what do we know about some mystery altercation? We think after the Triton left Horn Island.
Nancy, this is a mystery altercation that is being described through social media as something that took place around 5 p.m. that day. This is 30 minutes after the Triton already left. And in this particular account, a Bertram boat was seen leaving shortly afterward at a high rate of speed. Now, this social media conversation claims that a person, one of the passengers, pretty certain Nolan Wells, was part of a group that was, quote, almost fighting around 5 p.m.
Bip, 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 bip. Whoa, wait. Hold on, Nellie. Did you say 5 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I jumped in, Dave Mack, is because 5 p.m., if Nolan was seen in an altercation at 5 p.m. on Horn Island, that's after the Triton, had already left. Let's see the boat, control room. We're talking about the boat leaving Horn Island. That boat. Had that boat already left when this altercation occurred? Dave Mack, that's a yes, no.
Yes.
Listen.
But the person said in the DM to another kid that is associated, not any of the kids that I interviewed to talk to, but that could be associated to some degree, that knew Nolan, that this person wrote a message saying, me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan, and to the effect of, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Nolan and another person that he may have been in an argument with, to me, are people that need to be investigated.
Guys, let me first introduce Cheryl McCollum, Cold Case Investigative Research Institute founder. Let that sink in at coldcasecrimes.org. She's a star of a hit podcast that I have listened to on loop, by the way, Cheryl McCollum. And I don't like much of what you're saying, yet I keep listening. Zone 7, she's author of a brand new book, Swans Don't Swim in a Sewer, solving the cold case of the Flint River Killer's daughter, and more. But for my purposes tonight, she's a forensics expert. Greg Morse, before I even get to the merits of this, where I meant to go with this is, Everyone has been focusing on the young men that were on the boat that took him to Horn Island. Then we get this audio that we're trying to corroborate, where seemingly in the background you hear them talking about trying to revive Nolan Wells on the boat. Is that even real? We don't know yet. Or has it been doctored? Trying to find out. I've got experts telling me, renowned experts by the way, it's real, and renowned experts saying it's not real. It's just like a trial, right? Where it's expert v. expert, who's telling the truth.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about this mystery altercation. If it happened at 5 p.m., that boat was already gone. Now,
Well,
as
you're
much
right.
as some people want to hang the young guys on the boat, I want to make sure we hang the right person. If there is a mystery altercation after that boat lift, we need to be investigating that altercation.
Well, you're 100% right, because the three young men that are, at least the people are saying are involved in this, that went there with Nolan Wells, there's a specific timeline
Put
from
him
what
up.
I read.
Put him
They
up.
needed assistance on their boat. They left at 4:30.
You
They had
just
called
gave me
CTO.
a chill
So
down my spine.
if
You
so,
can't
if there
introduce
is-
something because people say, I don't care what people say, on either side.
No.
They mean nothing
Yeah,
to me. What?
Nancy, that's the problem when we have things like podcasts today and people who are not qualified to talk about serious things like this. They're not experts. They want to get likes. Law enforcement is going to keep information
He
close to the
said
best.
he saw the DMs. I don't have
Okay,
a
so what does that
reason
mean?
to think
that's
he
not
didn't
legitimate.
see the DMs. Now,
See?
many people are arguing that he has taken a side. We have not taken a side. I'm on the side of finding out why everybody got back to the mainland except Nolan Wells.
Well,
And
listen,
nobody
these
saw
are
anything.
teenagers.
Nobody knows anything. It's just like Tupac Shakur got shot on the Strip
Nancy,
at Vegas,
these are-
and we still
the-
don't know what happened. Nobody saw a thing. That's BS.
These are
What?
young men hanging out. It's not unusual one may stay behind to hang out with other people. None of that is unusual for teenagers partying
Put
and
'em
having
up.
a good time. So that fact alone doesn't
Morse.
mean anything. What?
Where's your cell phone? Where is
The-
your cell phone? And try not to lie. Where's your cell phone?
Okay. Right here.
Where's? Oh, really? Because here's mine. So you want to tell me Nolan Wells stayed behind and his cell phone went without him? I understand. Don't everybody start screaming that he didn't want to get it wet. Of course he didn't want to get it wet. But there's ways around that. You can go put it on shore in your shoe, like everybody else does, to hide it from people, and then retrieve it when you go. But no, he let the boat leave with his phone. I agree with his mother on that. That is not Nolan Wells. He was never away from his phone.
So that doesn't mean anything in and of itself with what's coming out about this. You know, you're talking about him staying behind. You're talking about there's evidence that he was there after 4:30 p.m. If he's there after 4:30 p.m., Nolan Wells on that island hanging out with other people, that's it. The fact that a cell phone is on a boat and he's not as a teenager doesn't really mean anything at all.
Okay, you know what? I asked you about a mystery altercation, and should we be looking in that direction right now? And you're like going on and on about the cell phone.
No,
and
but
everybody
that's
that
my
owns
point.
a cell phone,
But-
which is everyone,
but
knows you never
Nancy,
leave
that's
without
my
your cell
point.
phone.
You have to look at what really happened. If there was this mystery altercation, then yes, the police need to be investigating that. They need to be looking into that.
Quick pause before we get into the phone, the autopsies, and Dr. Umar's interview, because this next stretch is where the case really opens up. Here's something honest about this channel. Our view count is a lot higher than our subscriber count right now, and that only changes if people watching decide to stick around for what comes next. If you want every update on this case the moment it's confirmed, not the moment it goes viral, the moment it's actually confirmed, that's what hitting subscribe does for you here. Takes 2 seconds. Let's keep going. Separate from the timeline dispute, there's the phone. When Nolan was reported missing, his phone wasn't with him. It surfaced in the possession of one of his friends. Christine has said she and her sister tracked the device themselves using a family location sharing app and found it at a friend's residence. Not because it was handed to them. When they accessed the phone, both of Nolan's Snapchat accounts were completely empty. No saved photos. no saved videos. Even though, by his mother's account, Nolan reliably documented outings like this one. And even though that kind of content should typically still be retrievable within the app's normal recovery window, some text messages appear to be missing as well. Now, I want to slow down here, because this is exactly the kind of detail that gets flattened into something scarier than it is. None of this on its own proves tampering by anyone. People clear their phones for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with a crime. And deleted data on a modern phone is not automatically unrecoverable. Forensic extraction can often retrieve information long after someone believes it's gone for good. As of the most recent public statements, the sheriff's office says it never had physical possession of the phone and formally requested it for forensic extraction, while the family's own investigators examined the device first. Following a meeting with the district attorney's office, both sides agreed to something meaningful: a mutual, simultaneous inspection. The family's experts and law enforcement's experts examining the same data, pulled the same way at the same time, specifically so neither side can later dispute how it was handled. That arrangement is, by most legal analysts' accounts, fairly unusual. It likely wouldn't exist without the sustained public and legal pressure this case has generated. Now, here's where I need you to pay very close attention, because this next part is a correction. And it's one that a lot of people covering this case still haven't caught up on. Early in this case, a short video started circulating, filmed from a boat, panning across the water toward a crowded beach. Somewhere in that footage, a voice can be heard demanding a phone back. Something close to, "Give me my phone. What are you doing?" Attorney Ben Crump told multiple outlets in the case's early days that his team believed that voice belonged to Nolan. For a huge portion of the public watching this unfold, that claim was treated almost instantly as confirmed fact. It became one of the most repeated, most dissected details of the entire story. A friend named Tristan Shepard came forward publicly and said the voice on that video is his own, from a completely separate, unrelated altercation with someone else that day, and that Nolan isn't even shown in the footage. He described being physically calmed down and helped off a boat during that argument, with Nolan nearby in the water, out of frame. At a later press conference, a reporter pressed Crump directly on whether that quote could actually be confirmed as Nolan's voice. His answer was noticeably more careful than it had been earlier in the case. The original claim, he said, came from one witness. Since then, another witness has disputed it. His team now has audio experts trying to determine, if possible, whose voice is actually on the recording. As of that press conference, the question remained unresolved. If you're still seeing that original clip repeated online as settled fact, that correction is worth remembering. If this is the first time you're hearing that the "Give Me My Phone" voice was walked back by Crump's own team, type "corrected" below, because I still see that clip getting shared as confirmed proof, and it stopped being that weeks ago. At the center of nearly every open question in this case sits one piece of pending evidence: the actual cause and manner of Nolan's death, which has not been officially confirmed by either medical process currently underway. The state autopsy was conducted at the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. Investigators have said there is currently no indication of drug or alcohol involvement, though officials have stressed that reading is preliminary. A full cause and manner of death hasn't been released because the medical examiner is still waiting on toxicology results, which officials themselves have said could take weeks depending on lab capacity. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lynn confirmed one specific, undisputed fact. The swimsuit recovered on the body matched the one Nolan had been photographed wearing earlier that same day. That is, so far, the single fact both the family and the official investigation agree on without qualification. What they don't agree on is what it means. Ben Crump has argued publicly that Nolan was a genuine athlete in peak condition, a strong swimmer, and that on a crowded holiday beach with hundreds of people, that isn't the kind of place a strong swimmer simply disappears from unnoticed. Coroner Lynn has offered a different frame, that the current on that end of Horn Island runs strong, and that stretch of the Barrier Islands has a documented history of drownings independent of the specific case. Neither man is necessarily wrong about what he's describing. The independent autopsy performed in Washington, D.C., and funded in part by Colin Kaepernick, also has not been made public. Even though Crump has said at multiple points he expected findings soon, until either report is released, every theory in this case, including the one you're about to hear from Dr. Umar Johnson, is sitting on top of an incomplete medical record. That's not a criticism of anyone asking questions. It's just the honest state of the evidence right now. All right, we're about to get into Dr. Umar Johnson's full interview, and then the mystery altercation claim from this week. This is the part of the video most of you clicked for. So before we get there, if you're the kind of viewer who'd rather wait for the confirmed update than doom scroll 100 unverified clips to piece it together yourself, that's the entire reason this channel exists. Our subscriber count still has a long way to go to catch up with how many of you are actually watching these breakdowns. So if this one's earned it, go ahead and subscribe before the next segment. It genuinely helps more than you'd think.
Now, with that being said, I'm not blaming Nolan in any way, shape, form, or fashion for his loss of life. I'm just simply saying he shouldn't have been out there. Now let's take a closer look at this, Art. According to what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and what I've read, Nolan, Warren, Wyatt, and Trayston left for Horn Island the morning of July 4th. According to Warren's own words that he offered during an interview with Officer B.T. Coon, that's Coon as in C-U-N-E, Coon as in K-H-E-W-N, Coon as in K-U-H-N, Coon as in C-O-N-N. So Warren did a sit down with Officer B.T. Coon. And as we all know, B.T. Coon is White YouTube's pet monkey. He's White YouTube's pet monkey. So Warren sat down for an interview with White YouTube's pet monkey. And he said that they left for Horns Island the morning of July the 4th, and that it was approximately 30 of them spread across 3 boats. Approximately 30 youth spread across 3 boats. They all went to Horn Island together. They arrived at approximately 11:30. So they left around 9-ish, 8, 9-ish, whatever the case may be. They left the morning of July 4th. They arrived on White Devil's Horn Island at about 11:30. So 3 boats, 30 youth, they went together. I'm not clear on whether the 3 boats came back together or not. That's another question that I have, Art. Did they come back together the same way they left together? Because I'm treating all 30 of those white youth and all 3 of those ships as crime scenes and as suspects. All 3 ships are potential crime scenes. All 3 boats are potential crime scenes, and all 30 youth are potential suspects. I don't know why Jackson County Sheriff Ledbetter or Jackson County District Attorney Mulrath, I don't know why they decided to separate the boat that Nolan was on. Warren's boat, I don't know why they separated that boat from the other 2 for purposes of investigation and analysis. Because those 3 boats operated as a team. And since they went out there as a team, and it hasn't been made clear to me whether or not they came back together as a team, all 30 white youth and all 3 boats should have been part of this investigation, not just the 1 boat. That is my first big issue with this case. Who decided to separate the other 2 boats and the other 20 or so youth? I got a problem with that, Art, because according to the Cajun Navy, they have no GPS information on the other 2 boats, Art. They have no GPS information on the other 2 boats. Now let's get into this. According to Warren and Nolan's other so-called white friends, they decided to leave the island around 4:30. So they were roughly on White Devil's Horn Island from 11:30 to 4:30. That is about 5 hours. About 5 hours. Now, one question that has to be asked, Art, why did y'all leave so soon? Because they party on Horn Island all day long. Y'all didn't leave at sunset. Y'all didn't leave at sundown. Y'all left after only being there 5 hours. That's a little suspicious, Art. And I haven't heard anybody ask any of them, why did y'all decide to leave after only being there for 5 hours? Did y'all plan to only be on White Devil's Horn Island for 5 hours? Why did y'all leave at that time? But we'll deal with that later. So then let's listen to Javon, Nolan's other best friend. Now, another problem I got with this whole story, Art, is Nolan allegedly had too many best friends. I'm trying to find out, how does Nolan have so many best friends? And why did all of these so-called best friends leave their best friend on White Devil's Horn Island without his cell phone and keys? I'm trying to figure this out. So Javon claims he's Nolan's best friend. Warren claims he's Nolan's best friend. And Trayston allegedly claims that he's Warren's best friend. So did Warren have 3 best friends? Excuse me. Did Nolan have 3 best friends? Did Nolan have 13 best friends? Did Nolan have 30 best friends? Because if Javon is the best friend of Nolan, and if Warren is the best friend of Nolan, and if Trayston is the best friend of Nolan, exactly how many best friends did Nolan have? Are y'all making this up? Who did Nolan tell Warren was his best friend? Who did Nolan ever tell Trayston was his best friend? I'm not going to question Javon, because he's a brother. And I do believe that there's a strong chance that they may have been best friends. And I say that not only because Javon is a brother, Art, but I also felt that Javon, through the investigation team and alley-oop, with some of the answers that he gave on TMZ. Some of Javon's answers, in my opinion, kind of made it clear to me he actually cared about Nolan. He actually cared about Nolan. I believe Javon actually cared about Nolan, and because of that, I'm willing to say that Javon may have actually been Nolan's best friend. I wish somebody would have asked Javon, Art, to your knowledge, has Nolan ever called Warren his best friend? Has Nolan ever called Trayston his best friend? To your knowledge, Javon, has Nolan ever told you that Warren and Trayston were best friends of his? Because, Art, I'm having a problem with this three best friend narrative. Okay? I used to be 18 years old. You might have one best friend. You may have 2. Don't get me wrong, if you all hang in a pack, you could have 3 best friends. But according to Javon's own words, Art, he didn't really hang around with them other guys too much. That's what I allegedly thought I heard him say. He didn't hang around with them guys too much. So if you got 2 or 3 or 4 best friends, you guys normally travel as a group. Javon seemed like he kind of spent most of his time with Nolan alone, just the 2 of them, not with Trayston and Warren. Although he knew them, it didn't appear that he hung out with them on the regular. So how could they all then be best friends? It's possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying it's unlikely. So, according to Javon, Art, he saw Nolan at 3:40 on the island. According to Javon, what I heard him say to TMZ allegedly was that he had another friend who was involved in an altercation, and that he left Nolan at about 3:40 to go check on his buddy, because according to Javon, his buddy was on another ship, and the parents of whomever on this other ship were trying to get him off the island because he was crashing out. He never said who this friend was. He never exactly told us what happened. But he said, I left at 3:40 to go check on my friend on another boat because, quote unquote, well, these are not his words, I'm paraphrasing, he was kind of wilding out, crashing out, and he needed to help calm him down. I'm paraphrasing. He said when he got back, Nolan was nowhere to be found, and I'm paraphrasing. And Nolan's boat that he came on, Warren's boat, the so-called Big Daddy, the 22-foot Triton, had already left the scene. So according to Javon, I left Nolan at 3:40 to go deal with another situation. I came back, he was gone. According to Katie, the white girl who Nolan's white best friends are trying to use as an alibi in this situation. Okay, because they claim, and Warren said the same thing to Officer B.T. Coon when he spoke with him. They claim that Nolan told them, I'm going to hang back on this island and talk to Katie. You guys go ahead and I'll get back however I get back. Again, I'm paraphrasing. But guess what? We learned through Katie's sister that Katie said she has no knowledge of Nolan ever saying that. In fact, Katie said, Art, that Nolan told her, I got to get ready to head back to the boat because my friends are leaving soon. That don't sound like somebody who plans on staying, Art. Okay? According to her sister, Katie said Nolan told Katie, it's time for me to head back to the boat because my friends are going to be leaving soon. As far as I'm concerned, Art, Javon and Katie both threw us an alley-oop. Javon and Katie are throwing Sheriff Ledbetter of Jackson County an alley-oop because neither one of them are corroborating the story of Nolan's white friends on that boat. In fact, Javon said, this ain't adding up. Javon said, it's not like Nolan to say, you guys go ahead and leave me on this island and I'm just going to stay back to talk to this girl who I barely know. According to Javon, it don't make no sense. Javon ain't stupid, Art. That's his friend. He know damn well Nolan didn't tell them that he was going to stay back on that ship. And then Katie, I'm going to give a little bit of respect to Katie on this situation. Because as a white girl, Art, for her to come out and say that is not what happened, for her to come out and say that Nolan told me I got to get back to the boat because my friends are leaving, for her to say that, Art, that took a little bit of courage and honesty. That took a little bit of integrity. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to give her too much credit because she is trying to clear her name. What Katie is basically doing, Art, is she's saying, listen, y'all did whatever y'all did to Nolan, but you're not going to add me to the narrative. I'm not serving as nobody's alibi. I'm not helping nobody get out of this situation. You're not going to use me as a decoy, but I still appreciate Katie speaking up for Nolan, Art, because she didn't have to do it. Although she's trying to protect herself and stay out of the investigation, I appreciate Katie for letting the world know Nolan told me I got to head back to the boat because my friends are getting ready to leave. Now, according to Katie, Art, she spoke to Nolan sometime between 3 and 4:30. Now, her window appears to be wider than everybody else's window. So Javon's window is much smaller. He said, I saw him at 3:40, went to deal with another situation. By the time I came back, they were gone. Katie said I spoke with him between 3 and 4:30. And I allege, Art, one of the reasons that Katie is making her window so wide is she trying to leave a little bit of wiggle room for Warren and them to get their story straight, allegedly. I think Katie trying to leave a little bit of wiggle room for Warren and them to get their story straight, Art. Now, according to our sister Christine, and my heart goes out to Sister Christine, Nolan's mother. My heart deeply, deeply goes out to you, Queen. According to Christine, Art, she heard from a coach who ran into Nolan on the island as well. And according to the coach, he spoke to Nolan between 2:30 and 3:30. So Javon didn't see him after 3:40. The coach spoke to him sometime between 2:30 and 3:30. And Katie said her conversation with Nolan was between 3 and 4:30. So you know what that means, Art? We can pretty much digest, conclude that Nolan was likely to have been unalived, Art, sometime within the hour of 3:30 to 4:30. I'm going to insinuate that Nolan's life was taken because I do not believe he accidentally drowned. If he drowned, he was forcibly drowned, and we'll get to that in a minute. If Nolan drowned, he was forcibly drowned. He did not accidentally drown. He was a great swimmer. Miss me with the nonsense. That boy did not drown. If he drowned, it was by force. So again, Art, all three of these people, arguably the last three to see him alive, except for those who took his life, Katie, the coach, and Javon, are arguably the last three people to see Nolan alive, except for those who took his life on that boat, allegedly. That's my position. So they're all basically cutting off around 3:30, Art. Remember, they made the call for the emergency CTO at 4 o'clock. Javon said he cut out 3:40. The coach, 3:30. They made the call at 4 o'clock. That conversation we heard, the CTO call, which we're going to talk about in a minute, that took place at 4. It sounded like there was some struggling going on in the background. Nolan could have been getting unalived while they were making the call, Art. Nolan could have been getting unalived while they were making the call. Nolan could have been getting choked out while they was on the phone with Cito. So again, Art, my position is Nolan lost his life somewhere within the hour of 3:30 to 4:30. Now, before we go any further, Art, I need Ben Crump investigation team and Sheriff Ledbetter's investigation team to have a conversation with Javon, because according to Javon's statements on TMZ, the police never spoke to him. And I have serious concerns with the manner in which this investigation has been carried out so far, Art. I have very serious concerns with the manner in which this investigation has been carried out so far. So anyway, Javon said police never spoke with him. Why? We need a conversation with Javon, not because I think he's a suspect. I believe Javon is innocent, but we need to find out what he knows. That's number one. We also need a conversation, Art, with the coach. Who is this coach that Sister Christine said contacted her and told her he had a conversation with Nolan on the island between 2:30 and 3:30? We need to find out what he knows. And according to Katie's sister, she is already cooperating with the authorities. But here's why those three got to be spoken to, Art. Not only so we find out what they know, Art, but did they see each other during their conversation with Nolan? Because Javon, if you was talking to Nolan and left him at 3:40, and if Katie was talking to Nolan sometime between 3 and 4:30, and if the coach was talking to Nolan between 3:30 and 4:30, Art, at least two of you should have ran into each other. Did the coach see Javon? Did Javon see the coach? Did the coach see Katie? Did Katie see the coach? Did Katie see Javon? Did the coach see Katie? Art, if all three of them are saying they saw Nolan for the last time, roughly within the same hour, hour and a half, Art, did y'all run into each other? Let me tell you why I'm asking this question, Art. And I'm not throwing no shade at my brother Javon. I like Javon. I'm not throwing no shade at Miss Katie McCormick. I don't know her. I'm not throwing no shade at the coach, Art. But the reason I need to know why all y'all put y'all time within the same frame and you may have not possibly seen one another, Art, are you guys keeping yourself out of the window of witnessing this crime by saying you didn't see him after 3:30. I want you to follow what I'm saying here, Art. It's kind of interesting that they all saw him last at 3:30, not after 3:30. Javon 3:40, roughly 3:30. My point is, Art, for all three of them to have the same exact time, if they did not see each other at all during these conversations with Nolan, are they pushing up the window of time during which they saw Nolan so they cannot be included in this investigation as a witness to a crime? In other words, Art, I don't think Javon had nothing to do with it. I know he didn't. But is he saying he saw Nolan a little earlier than he saw him so he can't be pulled into the investigation? I don't think Katie had nothing to do with the crime, but is Katie putting her conversation with Nolan a little earlier than it actually took place to make sure she can't be dragged into the investigation as a witness to a crime? Is it possible that the coach is putting his conversation with Nolan earlier than what it was, Art, to make sure he cannot get dragged into the investigation? I don't think they had anything to do with it, but they could have been a witness to a homicide, Art. They could have been witness to a homicide. If they did not see each other, if none of those three people, the coach, Javon, and Katie, if they did not see each other at all talking to Nolan, if none of them saw each other talking to Nolan, at least two of them are lying about the time they last saw Nolan. Are you following me, Art? All I'm saying is I have my suspicions as to whether or not this convenient 3:30 cutoff window, I have my suspicions that this convenient 3:30 cutoff window may have not actually been the time they saw Nolan. They may have saw Nolan closer to the time he lost his life. Now stay with me, Art. I want to back up for a minute. And I want to say this to Brother Elmore, Nolan's stepfather. And I want to say this to Coach Tracy, who I believe was one of Nolan's coaches. Brother Elmore, the stepfather, and Coach Tracy, the coach, both said on national television, Art, that they don't think race played a role in this at all. Elmore, Tracy, two dark-skinned black men in Mississippi, and both of them said on national television, I don't think race had anything to do with this case. I am disappointed in Brother Elmore. I am disappointed in Coach Tracy. How dare you help these young people avoid the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. federal hate crimes law, Art, by you saying you don't think this had anything to do with race, Brother Elmore and Coach Tracy. You are helping these white folks avoid federal hate crimes charges. And let me tell you why this is important, Art. Let me tell you why this is important. Under the federal hate crimes law, Matthew Shepard, James Byrd, signed by Barack Obama, 2009. Under the Federal Hate Crimes Act, Art, you can go to jail for life. You can go to jail for life under the Federal Hate Crimes law. So if you can go to jail for life under the Federal Hate Crimes Act, Art, why is Nolan's stepfather and coach telling white folks they don't think it had anything to do with race? I still love my brother Elmore. I still love my brother Coach Tracy. But would y'all please watch what comes out of your mouth during this investigation? Because you are undermining justice for Nolan. I hope you're listening, Brother Elmore. And I hope you're listening, Coach Tracy. You are undermining justice for Nolan by saying you don't think race had anything to do with it. How in the hell do you know? How do you know if race had anything to do with it? How well do you know these young people? It was 30 of them, Art. It was damn near 30 white youth spread across 3 boats. How many of them did Elmore know? How many of them did Coach Tracy know? So how are you going to go on TV and say, I don't think it had anything to do with race? Why are you helping them avoid accountability for what they may have done? I don't know if they did it, Art. You don't know if they did it. They don't know if they did it. And they definitely don't know if it was motivated by race. What they should have said, Art, is what Javon said. And that's why I like the young brother Javon. That's why I like that young brother Javon. His mother, Sister Tashima, shout out to you. You raised a good kid. When TMZ asked Javon if he thought it had anything to do with race, Art, when TMZ asked Javon if he thought this had anything to do with race, he said, what? I don't want to answer that question. I don't want to answer that question. Perfect answer. Perfect answer. Or, Art, they could have said, I don't know. Nolan's stepfather could have said, I don't know if it had anything to do with race. Coach Tracy should have said, I don't know if it had anything to do with race. But to say you don't think it had to do with race when he was the only black boy across 3 ships? Are you out of your mind? Why would you say that and help them avoid the Federal Hate Crimes Act? Javon gave a better answer than those 2 black men. Javon, a child, gave a better answer than those 2 black men, Art, when he said, I don't want to answer the question. And shout out to Javon, Art. He's intelligent. You know why? Because by saying, I don't want to answer the question, he answered the question. Of course, race has something to do with it. This is the United States of America. Race has something to do with everything involving black people. The country was built on the backs of black people. It's maintained on black people. We are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system, overrepresented in the unemployment line, under the poverty line. Of course, everything in this country has to do with race. And I'm disappointed in us, Art, that we are so afraid to call racism what it is, that we literally got people asking us, when a white person takes the life of a black person, do you think it had anything to do with race? When a police officer takes the life or shoots a black person, do you think it had anything to do? What kind of idiotic gaslighting question is this, Art? All white people are racist. All white people are racist. So we can stop asking if it had anything to do with race. If it's black and it's white, it has something to do with race because all white people are racist. That's just how it is. Now let's get back to this. Let's get back to this.
For 31 days, Dr. Umar Johnson, an educator and public commentator with a large national following, said nothing publicly about this case. That silence, on its own, became something people noticed. This week, he explained why, and then he laid out over an hour of questions about the investigation. I want to be precise about something before we play any of it. What follows is his stated opinion and his personal read of the public record. It is not new evidence, and it is not a confirmed account of what happened on that island. Treated exactly the way you want a serious commentator's take treated. Worth hearing in full, not worth mistaking for a verdict. His stated reasoning for the month of silence draws a direct comparison to 2 other cases that drew massive national attention. The deaths of Freddie Gray in Baltimore and Michael Brown in Ferguson, where in his view, a wave of commentators arrived not out of concern for the families involved, but to build views off of someone else's tragedy. He says he made a deliberate choice to stay out of this case for exactly that reason, and only felt it was appropriate to speak once. In his words, everyone else had already given their opinion. Now here's the part of his interview that's actually generating the most discussion, and it's worth separating clearly into 2 different kinds of claims, because they deserve 2 different levels of scrutiny. The factual claims. According to information Johnson cites, some of which was independently reported through Warren Cole's own sit-down interview, approximately 30 young people spread across 3 separate boats made the trip to Horn Island that morning, departing around 8 to 9 a.m. and arriving around 11:30. Johnson raises a specific, pointed question that, as of this recording, does not appear to have a clear public answer. Did all 3 boats return together, the same way they arrived together? That is a fair question. It's the kind of question a competent investigation should be able to answer definitively. And if it's been answered, that answer hasn't reached the public yet. The interpretive claims. This is where Johnson's framing moves from factual gap into personal opinion. And it's important that you hear it that way. He argues that every person on those boats that day should be treated, in his words, as a person of interest, not because of any specific evidence connecting them individually to Nolan's disappearance, but because of their proximity to it. That is Johnson's stated position. It is not how the Jackson County Sheriff's Office has characterized the investigation, and it goes well beyond what the current public record supports about any specific individual. He also frames the entire holiday itself through a historical lens that Independence Day, given the history of slavery in this country, is a holiday that should be celebrated by Black Americans in the first place, and that this framing is part of how he's processing why Nolan was on that island at all. That's a historical and political argument, not a factual claim about what happened to Nolan, and it's one plenty of people, included within the Black community, would push back on. We're not going to adjudicate that argument here. It's a stated view, presented as his view. Here's what I want you to sit with for a second before we move to the next segment. Johnson is right that the three-boat question hasn't been publicly answered. He's on much shakier ground treating 30 individual teenagers as suspects with no individualized evidence. Can both of those things be true about the same interview? I think they can. Let me know where you land in the comments. Now, while Dr. Umar Johnson's interview was still spreading online, a second, completely separate story broke. And this one didn't come from a commentator's analysis. It came from a cable true crime broadcast, built around a claim nobody has been able to independently confirm. This is the mystery altercation. Here's the claim, exactly as it was presented, with nothing added. According to social media messages relayed on air at approximately 5 p.m. on July 4th, roughly 30 minutes after the boat carrying Warren, Wyatt, and Tristan had already left the island, a group, possibly including Nolan, was described as almost fighting near the water. A different boat was reportedly seen leaving the area shortly afterward at high speed. I want to walk through exactly how thin this actually is, because it matters. The source is a direct message from one person to another person who is described as associated to some degree with people who knew Nolan, not a named witness, not a sworn statement, not anything submitted to investigators as of this recording. The message itself reportedly reads along the lines of, "Me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan," aimed at an unnamed third party. There is also a separate piece of circulating audio, allegedly recorded on a boat, that some listeners believe captures people attempting to revive Nolan. On the same broadcast that reported this claim, one forensics expert said they believed the audio was authentic. Another said they did not. As of this recording, that disagreement has not been resolved, and the audio has not been authenticated by any law enforcement agency. Let's be completely clear about what that means. This is not confirmed. It is not evidence. It is an unverified second-hand claim, relayed through an anonymous message, discussed on air before any independent verification took place. That doesn't mean it's automatically false. Play It True leads start exactly this messy, but it means the responsible thing to do. And the only thing we're going to do with it here is tell you clearly what it is and isn't, rather than repeat it as if it's settled. What is worth noting is the timing itself. If the boat carrying Warren, Wyatt, and Tristan left at 4:31, and this described altercation happened around 5 o'clock, that would place it inside the same window we flagged earlier, the gap between the mechanical failure and whatever happened to Nolan afterward. If a version of this claim is ever independently corroborated, that overlap would matter. Right now, it hasn't been. This is the moment in the case where I need you to be honest with yourselves in the comments. If you can tell the difference between this is a real confirmed lead and this is an anonymous DM relayed on cable news, type verify below, because a lot of coverage this week did not make that distinction, and I think you're smarter than that coverage gave you credit for. We're heading into the final stretch, the full ledger, and where this case actually stands tonight. Before we get there, one more honest ask. Cases like this one move fast, and most channels covering it are choosing speed over accuracy. That's the gap this channel is built to fill. We'd rather be a day later and right than first and wrong. If that's worth something to you, this is a point in the video where subscribing actually changes what you see next, because it's how you get the next update the moment it's real instead of the moment it's trending. All right, let's finish this out. Here's a complete, honest state of this case as of tonight. Confirmed, the boat's full documented movement from a 9:56 a.m. departure to an 11:14 a.m. arrival at Horn Island. A genuine mechanical failure, the bilge pump, independently corroborated by real-time dispatch audio. A 4:31 p.m. departure from the island. A 5:44 p.m. return to the original dock. Formal identification of Nolan's body. A case now formally headed toward a grand jury once the sheriff's office investigation concludes. A joint, simultaneous forensic inspection of Nolan's phone, agreed by both the family's investigators and law enforcement. A direct, on-record correction from Ben Crump's own team regarding the viral "Give Me My Phone" video. Unresolved. Why Nolan wasn't aboard the boat when it left the island. What happened during the roughly 90-minute window before that departure. Whether all three boats that traveled to Horn Island that morning returned together. Whose voice is actually on the disputed video. Still under review by audio experts. What content, if any, was deleted from Nolan's phone and by whom? Pending the joint forensic examination. What both the state and independent autopsies will ultimately conclude about cause and manner of death. Unverified. The claim of a mystery altercation around 5 p.m. sourced to a single anonymous direct message. The authenticity of the audio some believe captures an attempted revival on a boat. No cause of death has been officially confirmed. No individual has been named a suspect. No charges have been filed against anyone in connection with Nolan Wells' death. Here's what I think is actually true about this week. Once you strip away the noise on both sides of it, Dr. Umar Johnson asked one genuinely useful question: whether all three boats returned together. Buried inside a lot of framing that goes well beyond what the evidence currently supports about any specific person on that island. And a cable broadcast surfaced a claim that might matter enormously if it's ever confirmed, and might turn out to be nothing from a source no more solid than a stranger's direct message. Both of those things can be true about this exact same week, in this exact same case. That's not a contradiction. That's just what it looks like when a real investigation is still open, and the internet doesn't wait for real investigations to finish. Nolan's parents are still waking up every morning to the same question they've been asking since the night his friends came home without him. Not as an accusation aimed at any one person, but as a plain, unbearable question any parent in their position would ask. What happened to my son? The toxicology results are still pending. The independent autopsy hasn't been released. The joint phone inspection hasn't happened yet. When any of those things actually change, not before, and not based on whatever spreads fastest online in the meantime, that's when this case genuinely moves forward. We open this video with a question. Do this week's two silences, finally broken, point toward the same answer, or two different ones? Here's the honest truth after everything we just walked through. We don't know yet. Dr. Umar Johnson's silence broke because he decided the moment was right to ask hard questions in public. The silence around a 5 o'clock window broke because of an anonymous message nobody has verified. Those aren't the same kind of breakthrough, even if they landed in the news cycle in the same 7 days. What we do know is this: a 90-minute gap still hasn't been explained. A 3-boat question still hasn't been answered. And a family is still waiting for 2 autopsy reports that haven't come back. We'll be here the moment any of that changes. If you made it this far, you didn't come here for a hot take. You came here for the actual record, and I hope that's exactly what you got. If you want us to go find out whether those 3 boats actually did leave the island together, the one question in this entire case that a real investigation could answer in a single afternoon, type answer below. If that comment fills up, that's next week's video. And if you're one of the people who's watched 3 or 4 of these updates now and still hasn't hit subscribe, genuinely, that's the only thing standing between you and never missing the next confirmed development on this case. It costs you nothing, and it's the only reason this kind of careful, slow, source-check coverage is able to keep existing on this platform. So if tonight earned it, go ahead and join us. Rest easy, Nolan. We'll be back the moment there's something real to report, not a moment before.